Right. Hello. Welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome. Welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. I was just doing a live with my friend and sister Candace Co on Facebook, and we fried out the system. So kind of in flow. So I'm just going to keep it going. I've been doing lives. We're trying to do a live like once a week together, just to kind of play. And we covered a lot of information. She's really up to date on the Gene Keys book, which I will start reading probably this summer when I have a little bit more free time to dip into it. But just talking about how our DNA is really, really activating and opening. And a lot of the questions I receive are, how do you get the information that you get? Where does it come from? And the other question that I get a lot of is, how do I activate my own way of connecting with my higher aspects, higher self, higher guidance team, whatever we want to label it as. And it's different for everyone. So if I'm working with someone, I can hone in on what their particular gift might be, or I can sometimes hone in and see what they might be missing to look for in order to further activate them. But I just want to talk about this generally across the board. And it really is all about the little things. It really is the information that I receive comes from my source stream connection to my highest aspect that is directly connected to source, which we all are connected to. And it's a supra consciousness, we could call it, creative aspect. This then allows me to tap into the multidimensional stream that is connected to the past, the future, the Akashic records, the earth, other planets, other beings, angels, guides, other shamans, animal guides, galactics, so on and so forth. It's really never ending. And I'm bringing this up because many people are going to start connecting with this more consciously. However, there are many that are not connecting with it consciously. And what's happening is they're so distracted by what's going on someone else's, as Candace and I were saying, ship. They're kind of asleep at the wheel of their own ship. So our vessels hold all of this information within them. And all of the stuff that we've been hanging on to, that is what I'm seeing is collected in our field. I always bring up the movie The Labyrinth. If you guys haven't seen that, it's such a cheesy, great movie. Anything with David Bowie in it, right, is worth watching. But there's a scene, and I've talked about this before, where the main character wakes up inside of a dream, meaning she thinks she's waking up. And then she wakes up and she's in her bedroom, but it's another dream. And all of her stuff is in this room, right? Those pieces of memory help to link us to a particular situation, a particular experience, so to speak. Yet there comes a point when all of those items, right, all of that junk, really it becomes no longer necessary to hang on to it. But unless we actually see that it's there and acknowledge that it's hanging on and blocking our field, it makes it difficult to see, or better yet, I was going to say see what's in front of us, but also to be present, because we're so bogged down, right? And I'm seeing again this reference to a ship. The sails are either unfurled or the wind is blowing and sails are open in order to capture the wind, the charge, the energy, or they're tightly wound up and bogged down with all of, I think what we refer to as a stowaway, all of this junk stowaway. And we aren't aware that our ship is moving so slowly. And we're looking at other people's ships going, well, how come they are doing that? Or, and I could go on and on with all of the examples that I'm kind of being guided to talk about. My point in this is that, I mean, there's a lot of points I could make. I think you get the point. So what I'm seeing for myself, my own journey, my own experience is I had to work through a lot of these shadow aspects and kind of look and see what have I been stowing away or holding on to. And in that movie, um, this puppet, this character has all this crap. It's a junkyard. And we have a junkyard, old bones, old skeletons in the closet, clothes that we could get rid of, stories that we could unpack and burn in the fire, you know? And I mean, this is physically and emotionally, psychologically, whatever we want to look at it. So whether it's a past relationship that we're still holding on to, a belief system, a belief about ourselves. When I say belief system, it could be a belief about a system that we have placed value in and we're refusing to give that up because it's been such an important part of our lives for so long. It could be a particular story that we've bought into. I'm hearing purchased. I'm hearing an in-app purchase, right? So we've purchased it and we don't want to get rid of it, even though it's bogging our phone down because we spent the money on it. And this is an example of what really is showing up for us. And I know at the beginning I said, well, how am I getting into contact with these beings? If we are not clearing that stuff out, it makes the channel harder to hear, see, feel, know, and understand. So it really is about us purifying, clearing, setting our intention to do this and acknowledging that we might have some stuff, some baggage that is just time to let go of. We talked a little bit in that video about the karmic wheel and karma being this memory and concept, even the idea about karma, which would be a belief in a particular belief system. And by the way, if you believe in karma or don't believe in karma, that's not where I'm going with this. That's your choice. And I am not here to agree or disagree with you. That's not my purpose in this video. My purpose is if someone, for example, let me use karma as an example, believes that they don't deserve something because they have too much karma, that is, number one, a belief in a particular system, the system of karma, that is bogging them down. Doesn't mean let go of that belief, although maybe it is time to let go of that belief if it's keeping you or me or we locked into a story, a program, or a system that is not allowing us to open, right? That would be an example of being bogged down. And if we dissect that, take it a little deeper, that belief about ourselves that is attached to the belief about karma is even the deeper problem, so to speak, or not really problem, but it's the corrosion that we've allowed to rust away at our own impeccability, at our own power, at our own purity. Our own inner child is bogged down by this belief that we don't deserve something because of some action that we took when we were a different person. Because we are always being gifted with the opportunity to hit the refresh button. It is our choice to reboot our computer, to refresh our buttons, or allow our buttons to be continuously pushed. So there's a lot of different variations. I'm going into a whole network that we could talk about here. But so part of what this is what's going on right now energetically for a lot of people. Are we captaining our own ship? Are we allowing others to run it for us? Are we asleep at the wheel? Are we getting rid of those things that are keeping us from going full speed ahead? Are we acknowledging that we even have those things still packed away and ignored? or the opposite, so blatantly big that we're unable to see past them? So these are all questions that I'm seeing coming up for me and myself. I'm seeing it come up in session. I'm seeing it come up in conversation with other humans. So I want to go back to the original kind of statement that I was saying about the guidance team and who I plug into. So if we think of source and we think of our DNA as a quantum computer, not to bring, again, I'm not comparing it to artificial intelligence, I'm just using it as a term, an analogy. We have access into the motherboard, source frequency, because that is where we come from, this motherboard of energy, from my perspective. We could call it whatever label we want to attach it to. It stores information and it's always accessible. But again, we are choosing whether we plug into that information or not, or whether we follow the other sources that were created from this source, i.e. the internet, and we get distracted by all of the pop-ups that come in to say, look at me, look over here. So we're being invited to acknowledge, process, integrate, digest, and then we see that these other programs are not the true source. They are not the true motherboard. They are merely an attachment to a particular system that was created from a divergence into another corridor. And this is all play on words, by the way. So oftentimes we get so lost in these corridors that we miss the big door, and we don't recognize that we are a walking portal. We are a walking creative bandwidth, and we are the routers. Are we routing our route? Are we coursing, changing our course, or are we allowing others to reroute us into different directions, because they are creators as well? So I plug into this information in my own way. It isn't necessarily going to be how you receive your messages. So I just want to share that right off the bat. What I do from my own creative field is going to look a certain way, and what somebody else does in their own creative field is going to look a certain way. We're all individual creators, right? So I just wanted to share that. It doesn't have to look like we might be getting messages. So let me go before I'm being guided to just kind of stay on that for a moment. If we're not recognizing the corruption in our own system, the junk, the coagulation, the rust, and we're not acknowledging that we have some things to integrate and process, and we're ignoring it, it can make that seem bigger, or that to be the information that we need to plug into. When in actuality, once we integrate that, it clears and makes room for a higher source of understanding. It's not always going to be very simple. There's going to be times that are very challenging, because when I say corruption, I really want that to be understood as it's a program that's basically been corrupted, or we believe that it's been corrupted. Not talking about corruption like what's going on in our society. I'm using a computer analogy, right? A term. But what happens is when we clear that, it allows us to remove that corrupted program and recognize and go back to the true inner child and purity from where that program was distorted. So we go to the source of the distortion, I think might even be a better word. And until we can work through those distortions, it is challenging to differentiate between a distortion of what we are not versus what we are. And that I'm sharing this because as we begin to open up more and more to the quantum field and the way that our guides and ancestors communicate with us, if we're viewing it and plugging into it from a distorted, meaning like we're in a place of fear when we're getting that information, it is hard for us to see through the distortion, right? We then will interpret the messages from a place of fear or a place of ego or a place of whatever, wherever we're at is how we're going to be perceiving. And I'm hearing interception. So I'm going to pause just for a moment. So I'm hearing inner distortion. So for example, we might, even if I use the word corruption, you know, if we're in a place of fear, we're going to hear that and go, ooh, I'm corrupted, I'm corruptible, I'm rotten, you know, I'm this, that. That's an example of a distorted concept of who we really are. Or it's a perspective of that message coming in. So I play with words a lot because the concept of what a particular word is not necessarily what's coming through. That word can be utilized in a myriad of ways because all a word is a combination of letter patterns and frequencies. And that combination of letters then comes through to communicate. So if a word can be utilized in a myriad of ways, then why not use it to its fullest advantage and potential? And that's kind of what's happening with a lot of people. A lot of people are having synchronicities, but they're stuck in a tunnel vision about what that synchronicity means. So I'm being guided to talk about numbers, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So I just want to kind of finish on that idea. So, or angels, for example. I've recently been connecting to the angelic realm more so than I have in the past. Could it be because I've now let go of my own judgment around what angels are or are not? Perhaps that is part of my own clearing of that corrupted program in which I had a concept of what they were and were not, which then kept me in attachment to fears or a belief system that maybe was distorted. Does that make sense? So I'm just using that as an example. So I'm not connecting to just one particular angel or archangel or archetype. I'm connecting to a collective of frequencies of angelic sounds and harmonies, which may be different than someone else who is connecting to a particular archetypical angel, if that makes sense. So part of it is letting go of those parameters that I'm working within so that I can go, oh, okay, this is something else that's attached to this angelic frequency, because really, what does that word mean? Yes, there is a linearization and a conceptual program that we have been taught through our generational knowledge of what that means. And it means different things for different people depending on our childhood and religions that we have been exposed to or taught, that we've learned from, and our own personal experience with that realm. Books we've read, movies we've watched, it all comes through and filters our perception about what that means. And my guidance team is like, let go of it. Let go of all of that and then see where you fit, where what's coming through fits in. So many of us are really activating this quantum realm, and it can be a little freaky for people to, it freaks them out. I mean, I've had people who have had like their eyes go back into their head, or they'll start moving their head, and it can be, I've done it. I do it when I, and then sometimes it's just a movement. But when I first started doing it, I was afraid. Like, what is happening? But I also learned that once I got into my heart and I really cleared all of these patterns that were coming up for me to clear, I was then able to let go, as the saying goes, let go and let God, right? However, yes, if I have all these fears and things I haven't worked through, and a particular archetype entity shows up, well, that's why we're guided to do the work, because then we can use our discernment and feel, is this archetype pure love and light? well, from one aspect, they all are, right? We could say it that way if we really just want to go quantum, but it's just a particle. It's just energy from one perspective. So do I resonate with that particular particle, entity, energy? Is this where I want to play? And then by acknowledging what I feel, I can say yes or no. Now that's one level. The other level is it's all me. So if that's not me, then I don't want to, that's something, go, clear. I integrate that aspect, or I see you and I acknowledge you, but you're not allowed in my space. But once you go into this quantum field, those energies don't have the same impact because we're not playing in that realm. It's us connecting to us, our other versions of ourselves that are now integrating so that we can become more complete and remember all of these versions of us, past, present, future, in the now moment. But if we're not being present and we're not doing the work to clear that junk, right, we then don't remember what's in the junk. And I'm referencing back to what Candace and I were talking about, the junk DNA, and she was bringing up the gene keys and the gene codes. So if that makes sense, there's stuff in there for us to unpack. It can either bog us down or it can bring us integration and further expansion. So that kind of is just one way of me answering the questions of how am I getting this information? I'm doing work to integrate aspects of me so that I can communicate in a more broad and expansive way with source through all ways of communicating with source. And this, from my perspective, is never ending. I will do it differently in a year, maybe, than what I'm doing, how I'm doing it now. However, everything is now. So perhaps I'm accessing how I could be communicating in a year now, or how I have before. So that's why it's all these different variations and versions. So it really starts though with the basics. And it really is getting present. Is this mine? Is this somebody else's? Am I worried about what's going on their ship, or am I worrying about what's going on in my ship? And why am I worrying? Is that creating more junk for me to then have to work through? Yes. So I always talk about the heart. It's coherence, it's meditation, it's breathing, it's yoga, it's dance, it's art, it's reading what makes us feel good. And those are the simplest, that's what we do in order to access this higher consciousness. People wake up in a sense and start to access this higher consciousness that aren't balanced and that aren't in their hearts. And that's kind of where I'm going with this. Yes, sometimes our third eye or our intuition or our dreams that come true come online before we are balanced. And that's where we are really being called to get our shit together, get our ship together, so to speak. Because if we're not balanced and we're calling in all of these energies that are further showing us where we're not balanced, but we're not recognizing it, we're only collaborating with these other entities, energies, attachments, stories in an unbalanced, unharmonious way, which then creates more confusion. And so the more clear we can be and the more disentangled we can be from, even though we are all one and everything is energy and it's all connected, yes, but we are on an individual human having a human experience. And so we do have to, in order to have our own experience, find those moments to disentangle from all that other stuff and come back to our truth, our source, that then helps us discern the information that we are receiving from our guides, our true north, so to speak, right? Because it's different for everyone. I may be having experiences with words that someone else is having with numbers. So when they ask their guides for information, it comes through in numbers or geometry. And then that person decodes that information in their own way through their own filters and their own perception. And that's what they're bringing to the table, so to speak. And I'm hearing the times tables, the way of communicating with source. And it's very unique and individual to everyone. Some people do it exactly how I do it in their own way too. So the numbers, I'm being guided to talk a little bit about that. So we can look it up. Let me pause for just a moment. So we can decode it by saying we go on angelnumbers.com, or there's another, I think it's Angel Scribes. And that's great. Someone else figured out what those numbers represent. And that's become a common theme, like numerology, number 11, master numbers, birth numbers. So we could look at it from a planetary aspect. We could look at it from a geometry aspect. We could look at the shapes of the numbers. My point in this is that that's one way of doing it. But another way of doing it is recognizing that sometimes these numbers are something unique to us. So maybe we're seeing one is new beginnings, but we're seeing double ones, which is, so it can mean multiple things is my point. It isn't always just what it says. Sometimes it's just to get our attention. It's a, what am I hearing? Yeah, synchronicity, but I'm asking what a better word would be here. It's a synchronistic tool to activate you into awareness, is what I'm hearing. So oftentimes these numbers have a certain shape and frequency associated with them to grab our eye, to grab our attention, to look at the shape, to then associate and link up with a particular memory or a particular geometry within our own encoding. So it's, again, much like the motherboard in the computer system. So for some people, a 2 is going to mean something different than to somebody else. Because, for example, if someone's birthday is on the 2nd, right, they're going to attach more memories to that number 2 in different ways than someone whose birthday is on the 8th, right? And so play with the way that this information comes in is what I'm being guided to share. It isn't always just some set, oh, this means this or this means that. From a linear perspective or the dimensional aspects that we're tapping into, but it could be even more than that. I'm being invited to guide you guys or invite you guys to follow your guidance and play, because it's literally the universe tapping you on the shoulder to get you to play and to say, I'm here, you're here. Let's open this up. Let's open up a dialogue. So that's why a lot of people see reoccurring numbers over and over again. It's to get us outside, to think outside of a box, because if it keeps showing up for us, it's showing up for us for a reason. It could be an animal. It could be a color. It could be a word. It could be a particular subject matter. And when we pay attention, that is our higher aspect, if you want to look at it from that way, our guardian angels, our guides, right? Our ancestors playing with us, showing us the multiple myriad of ways that the universe communicates through the spirit that moves in all things, animate or inanimate. So that's why tarot cards have so much energy associated with them. They have numbers and pictures, which are symbols, which then are created based around a particular foundational perspective of reality, right? To be used as a tool, divining tool. Some people use tea leaves. How do people read tea leaves? Again, there's so much, spirit is in all things, and we're really being invited to see where is it coming through in my life that I'm maybe not noticing it because I'm too stuck or too bogged down by my own illusion or again, whatever that might be. And we all go through this. If I'm not receiving any synchronicities, I know that I'm not paying attention, or that there's something that's trying to get me to say, why aren't you noticing any synchronicities? oh, it's because I'm too in my head and focused on whatever it might be. And as soon as I acknowledge that, um, I can then clear it because it's not hanging out in my field, blocking my receptivity with my higher guidance team. Does that mean that others, websites, healers, psychics, mediums, um, shouldn't be utilized to assist us in seeing what those synchronicities are? Absolutely not. We are all helping each other. And we are all sometimes that connection. I did a reading years ago with Daniel Scranton. I've done a couple with him and the Arcturians and one with the Creators. And it's like coming home. I needed that to remind me that this is how it feels to connect with Source. And it was an emotional, beautiful, highly charged experience. And Daniel Scranton was the medium for me to feel a deeper relevancy of my reality and connecting to Source. So I utilized him as a tool, and I'm very grateful for him offering that tool. And I am doing that now in my own way and helping others to feel into um, their own higher source. And we all do this. I do this. I still have sessions with other healers and star seeds and light workers and mediums. It's fun for me because what happens then is a particular symbol stands out and I see it from a different perspective. And in addition to that, as quantum beings entangled in energy, when you work with someone else, you are in that moment creating a portal, an opening in order to entangle with that energy. And that's another reason why it's important to connect with someone who is at least somewhat balanced, right? Is in a place of detachment from one perspective and really in their heart and a place of harmony. I don't know if balance is even the right word, but harmonized. And you can feel it generally when you're working with these particular beings. And it'll feel very, I'm being guided to talk with people about this as well. Okay. How do I use my discernment? It's a feeling. How do I realize that feeling? By practicing realizing that feeling, by acknowledging what I'm feeling in the moment. And so, for example, I'm being guided not to stop talking about the numbers. So if someone sees the numbers 911, they might associate it with emergency. And it might be putting them in a place of fear because of their perspective. I actually have a friend that sees this number all the time. And from another perspective, it's just pay attention. No, that's a creative number. That's a master number. You're in creation. What are you focusing on when you see that number? How does it make you feel? Maybe it's an opportunity for you to clear a belief around those particular numbers, or it's connecting to a particular date. I'm going back and forth here because what I'm being guided to share is, again, we have to clear our own distortions before we can really feel into what others are others are able to offer us as well. And that goes back and forth. Some days are easier than others. Some distortions take years to clear. Others, it just takes a minute of acknowledging, oh, wow, I feel this way. Okay, boom, gone, cleared, integrated. So it's a feeling for me. You can feel it in your gut. I think Magenta Pixie talked about this in one of her older videos. She says, say your name out loud. My name is, and then say and feel what you feel. And then say your name, say a name out loud that is not your name. My name is Tom, right? And feel how that feels. And you just practice over and over again. Some people aren't as feelers and they're more visual. So sometimes we'll get a sign, or something we'll say, should I do this? And all of a sudden, everything in the world comes up against us to stop us from following through with something. And then we have to discern and differentiate, oh, is it because my ego is trying to stop me? I'm trying to stop myself from expanding, or is it because the universe is trying to tell me, don't go that direction today? So there's levels of discernment. And I just want to share that it's not always obvious, but with more and more practice, it becomes more obvious. For me, if I'm really in a feeling of resistance, it just feels like resistance. It literally feels like I'm pushing against mud in order to have a conversation with someone that maybe I shouldn't be having. Not because it's from a judgment thing, it just may not be a conversation they're ready for, or it might be something that I don't need to say, and I'll feel a constriction around my throat, or I'll feel pushing a presence on my head. It isn't though, also, I don't go, well, who's that? What is that? Why am I feeling that? Because then that takes me out of the moment. I become aware and I become still. And then I ask, what does this mean for me right now? And I may not get an answer right away, but then maybe a synchronicity will show up. Someone will tell me a story that then answers my question from earlier. And again, this is an example of how spirit speaks through all things. Or someone will give me a gift that then answers my question about where I should be traveling to. I mean, I could go on and on, whatever those questions are. I use cards a lot. I don't use them as much as I used to. But in the beginning of my own journey, they were so helpful because I wouldn't necessarily be able to make sense of them. I would pull a crow card and I would go, okay, great, crow, magic, shape shifting. That doesn't make any sense. I'm not seeing any magic. I'm not a shapeshifter. But then things would happen throughout my day. A crow would land on my car. A crow would drop a rat in front of me. And then it changed from crow to rat, which was get off your butt, change. Changes are coming. You have to take action. I could go on. And you begin to interpret these messages once we pay attention that we're receiving those messages. Once we pay attention to I'm not sure if my internet just stopped and I'm now recording a new video. I'm not sure. So I'm just going to end on this note. My internet's like really wonky today. So we'll see if this comes up in 2 videos, but I'm going to end on that note. And just thank you for tuning in and thank you for sharing in this now moment. And really have fun with the way that the universe is communicating with you. And don't be afraid to play with it. If you're a guy or a girl and you think, again, let go of the judgments around being a guy and thinking that playing with animal cards is like something a girl would do. That's a perfect, or vice versa. That's a perfect example of a particular belief, as I was talking about earlier, like karma, that is creating junk in our field that is limiting us and the ways that we can communicate. That would be a certain belief around a particular archetype or female versus male. So go out and buy some animal cards and see what starts happening if that's something that sounds interesting, or buy a book on the power animals and just ask for the universe to show you through that particular type of communication, how can I connect better with my environment? What should I be focusing on? What should I be paying attention to? And if a crow shows up for you, go and look up, what does crow mean? And then play with it from there. You don't have to limit it to just what that means in the book. from your perspective, how did you feel when that crow showed up? What were you thinking about? Did it make you afraid? Why would you be afraid of a bird, of an animal? Is it because of movies that you've watched that associate crows with dark magic? Recognizing, ooh, there's magic in all things. You know, I could go on and on the way that animals communicate, and numbers too. So start to pay attention to just more than just meets the eye. And then more communication will come in many different ways as magic moves in all things. So in love and light, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this video. Namaste.